Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for a little Pitt official visit update video here. I'm up in my wife's parents' house up in Bradford, Pennsylvania, but we're keeping tabs on what's going on here. Paceris, Alan Saunders, as Pitt has their first official visit weekend. And uh, I wrote about this a little bit yesterday, but I think that based on last year, there's a lot of expectations coming out of this weekend. In that they received 8 to 10 commitments in a 7 day span last year. Um, I don't believe that's going to happen this year. Could it happen? Sure, could happen. But for a couple reasons, I don't think it's going to. But I still think it's going to be a successful couple weeks here for Pitt. And as I've been saying since February during Junior Day, I think this will be Pat Narduzzi and Pitt's best recruiting class of his tenure at Pitt. I think things are shaping up that way. If you look at the profile of kids they're bringing in, it's really good. I think they've gotten three good commitments so far. I believe one of those guys could possibly move up to a four-star recruit. But regardless of that, they're just in with a lot of kids this year, high-profile kids. And I think recruiting, I think a lot of times people want instant gratification, and they think things are going to happen right away. It's just not the way it happens. When you're coming for where Pitt was coming, recruiting is all about relationships, time in the market, as they say, and kids feeling comfortable with you, and that takes time. And I think based on the last couple of years, that time we're going to start seeing some benefits of the job that Archie Collins, Rob, I can name all of the assistants: Rob Harley, Tim Salem, Andre Powell, all those guys they've put in. And I think you're going to start seeing the benefits of that. On that, Chris Beatty, the new wide receiver coach, he offered two underclassmen, a freshman and a sophomore, yesterday. The work he's putting in right now, along with Coach Powell in Virginia, I think you're going to start seeing that benefit the next couple years, meaning next year, the year after. Because if you look at a lot of the kids that Beatty is offering from Virginia, a lot of them are freshmen and sophomores. So you're going to have time, and that's what he's doing. He knows a lot of these kids to begin with, but he's getting them familiar with the Pitt brand, and you're going to see success with that. This year in this recruiting class, I have to have my notes here because I don't remember this all off the top of my head, but in this weekend's class, they have two or three four-star kids coming and visiting. Same for next week, and I think that's the big reason why you're not going to see the recruits commit right away that you did last year, for two big reasons. Number one, I think they're dealing with a higher profile recruit than maybe they were last year, and it's going to maybe take these kids a little bit of time to make their decision. And number two, because of the volume of kids that wanted to make a visit to Pitt, Coach Narduzzi had to split it up into 2 weekends. Give or take, you got 20 plus kids, 22 kids, counting the 3 verbals they've had already who are making their official visit this weekend. And then you got a big weekend headed for next weekend. And as I mentioned, I believe we've already confirmed 3 4-star kids coming in. So, if you combine this week commitments from this weekend and next, maybe you're going to equal last year's 8 or 10 in a week. So I think you're just going to have to wait. And the other thing is, based on some of the kids that are coming in next week, I think Pitt needs to be a little bit cautious on, who wants to maybe commit right away. Because I know they're involved with 2 4-star receivers right now. And you got to look and say, how many receivers are we going to take? Because they've already gotten a commitment from Georgia wide receiver Jalen Barden. So I know they have on their board how many players at a certain position they plan on taking, obviously you're going to wait for those 4-star kids. If you get a sense after this weekend and next that you're in good with them, maybe another guy that isn't as highly ranked, you might have to hold him off a little bit until you see what these other guys take, because you can't take everybody, and we've talked about that for a couple years now. Just because they want to, you got to be very careful, because if you take a commitment and then you have the 4-star kid say, "Hey, I want to come," and you're out of room, you don't want to tell a kid, well, that's already committed. You can't push them off. So I think they're going to be very careful. And the other thing to watch for is, for instance, with the defensive backs, they got 6 or 7 kids in this weekend that are projected as defensive backs, and they can't obviously take all of them. So I'm sure there's a list of who they have as far as a priority. Obviously, somebody like Enzo Jenkins, a 4-star kid from Michigan, which is probably their highest profile kid in this weekend. Next weekend, he's going to be at Penn State. He's not a kid that is going to commit this weekend. He's a guy you're going to have to wait on, and hopefully you see what happens. There's a lot of speculation that Penn State is high on his list. So obviously Coach Collins and Narduzzi are going to be trying to impress him very much, so that he has something good here to leave on heading into next weekend against Penn State for something to compare it against. But you have a lot of other 3-star kids from Ohio and Georgia that I don't know how many defensive backs they're going to take in this class. They're going to graduate, I believe, 3 guys. Who knows at the end of the year, through attrition or whatever, kids leave, how many spots they're going to have open. So, but they're going to have a cap on that. So we will see how many kids decide to want to commit. Who do I think could commit? If I had to, like I said, I have been communicating with some of these guys, and if they did tell me they were leaning toward committing, I'm not going to say it but I have an idea in my mind. But if you're going to ask me, give me a couple names that could commit this weekend, I would say the 4 most likely guys, and I'm not saying they're going to, but if I see a pat signal, put it this way, if I see a pat signal come out later tonight, these will be 4 the guys that I'm going to text right away to find out if they committed. Number 1 would be linebacker Devin Hightower. He's a guy that Pitt has been on from the beginning. Rob Harley, they really want this guy. He's been here for a while, and we'll see what. I think he's a good possibility. Another guy's defensive end. They've offered. He's had an offer since January, and that's Emmanuel Belgrave. He's a defensive end out of Florida. He's a guy that Charlie Partridge really likes, projects as a big defensive end, gets after the quarterback. I could see him at some point, maybe even this weekend, committing. Running back Israel, I'm going to try to pronounce his name right, Abinkata from New York. I apologize, Israel. But he's a guy that he's already visited once with his parents. Coming back for this official visit weekend. Since Pitt offered him, he's received a bunch of Power 5 offers, but I think Pitt offering early is going to could play a role in what he ends up doing, and I know he had a good time. I've communicated a lot with him over the last month or so. I know he's very high on Pitt. Wouldn't shock me if he commits. And another guy, a defensive back, T. Denson, a big cornerback out of Georgia. He's one of the 6 or so defensive backs that are in town this weekend. I like Pitt's chances to get him. We'll see what happens. So those are 4 names to keep an eye on. When could we receive word on this? These kids arrived yesterday morning. They went through their activities last night, probably hung out with a bunch of the teammates, kids on the team, which is very important, last night, and I'm trying to find out what was in store today as far as activities. more team bonding tonight with the players, and then they'll probably have an exit meeting with their position coach and Pat Narduzzi tomorrow. So it wouldn't shock me if they're going to get some commitments if you start seeing them a little bit later tonight. And then obviously tomorrow as they leave. That was a big thing last year. So I remember there was a run on kids going into Narduzzi's office as they were leaving and telling them, I want to commit. I remember that 5 or 6 in a row told me as they were going in, they were coming in and out of the office talking to players, and they were all saying, hey, I just committed. And so I wouldn't expect anything earlier than that. Look for tonight to tomorrow. And, of course, stay with Pittsburgh Sports Now. Myself, Alan Saunders, Harry Paceris. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll see what happens. And, of course, we'll send you out any alerts as this happens. But I think it'll be a big weekend for Pitt. And my guess would be they're going to get, by Monday, we could see, I'm going to go with 4 commitments. We'll see if I'm on target. Thanks.